In this video, I want to talk about creating a query that lists queries. So what I mean by that are getting a list of all the queries in a particular Access database. In order to do that, I first want to talk about hidden and system tables. So you need to have some understanding about that first. Then we'll move along and I'll talk specifically about one system table called MSysObjects. And we'll go into the design of that particular table and talk about fields and records that are in that table. And then we'll move along and talk about making a query that actually lists all the queries in the current database. So before we get started, I want to explain something about Access, and that is that Access has hidden tables and system tables that collect information about the database that you've created. And it is the standard that you wouldn't see those tables, but you can set an option to be able to go and see those. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward with showing you how to set on the option to be able to turn that ability to see the system tables and the hidden tables on. Now I'm not going to turn on the hidden tables. I'll show you where it is, but I'm not going to turn it on. I'm just going to show you the system tables because that's all we need for this video. So here we are in an example database, and I am going to move forward with turning on that option. So I'll click on File, and then I'll click on Options. And I'll go here to Current Database, and I will scroll down a bit and click here on Navigation Options. And here I have a dialog box. And under Display Options, it says Show Hidden Objects, Show System Objects, and Show Search Bar. I'm going to go ahead and click on Show System Objects and say OK. And then I'll say OK again. And now if you look over here, you can see these grayed out objects listed here that are tables. And the fact that they're kind of grayed out gives you an indication that they're not objects that you've created, but they're part of Access. So you've seen about hidden and system tables. So now I want to zero in on one specific system table. It's called MSysObjects. And this particular system table has a number of different records in it that have information about the objects that you've created in your database. So we'll come over here and look, and in fact here it lists MSysObjects. Hopefully you can see that because it is kind of grayed lettering. But let's go ahead and look inside of MSysObjects. And I'll double click here, and you can see lots of information listed. And a lot of it looks like gobbledygook to us because we don't really understand all of what all this means. It just looks like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do anything with all this information. I should just leave it alone. But what I want to point out to you is this field right here, Name. Now if I scroll down a little bit, I might see some things that look familiar in my database. Like, for example, if I go over here and I look in the navigation pane and I look, here's a list of queries, and if I go over here to this name field column and I look, I can actually see these names being the same as the names over here. And so these are actually names of queries. So this particular column does hold some information about the various objects. Now there is other little crazy stuff in here that we don't really understand so well, but we do see some names here, okay? So I want to point that out. And then the other thing that I want to point out to you is that here we have a type field and we have some numbers in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this over to just to the left of name. And then I'm going to highlight, I'm going to keep the type column highlighted, and I'm also going to highlight the name column. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to sort it. And the reason why I'm doing that is to demonstrate some information for you. So I've got all of these names in here as we have seen before. And if I scroll down and look and I see my query names here, they all have a 5 associated with them. And in fact, if you make a query, it will put a record in this table indicating that it is a number 5, which represents queries, and it will give it the name in the name column of what you called your query. And you can also look and see here some other instances of the same kinds of things like with your forms. So here's a form and it has a certain number. Here's a form and it has a certain number. Here's a form and it has the same number. I mean, they're all the same number. So the type does seem to indicate the object type. So anyway, I want you to understand that queries have a type of 5 and other objects have a different number for their type. So the topic of this video, however, is to create a list of the queries. So I'm going to move on and demonstrate that. As it says in our agenda here, it says the next thing we want to talk about is create a query that lists queries. So I will move back to my database and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this particular table, system table. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a query. So I'll click on create and I'll click on query design. And I'm going to choose MSys objects as my table and I'm going to say close. Now remember that we said the name field had the name of the queries. And then the type field had a number in it that represented queries. So I'm going to say 5. Okay? So I have the name field and the type. And I'll go ahead and run it. Alright, so here we have some records with a type of 5. And some of them show us having our queries. Now, look over here and here's the queries and they are listed here as well. But then there's these crazy other things that have this tilde in front. We don't want those. So I'm going to go back to design view and I'm going to think, I've got those one records that have the first character is a tilde. And so how do I get rid of those so I can just have a list of my queries? So in order to explain that to you, I'm going to explain it in a few steps because it is a little on the complicated side. So first, I'm going to tell you that I want to just isolate that tilde to begin with so that it's displayed in my query. So I'm going to go ahead and say left, which is the left function, and what it's going to do is take anything within within what it's given and display that. So I'm going to say left, and I'm going to say left bracket name, and then I'm going to say right bracket comma 1, and then I'm going to say right parentheses. So again, the left function will take what it's given, and in this case it's given the field name, and it's going to chop it off from the left, beginning at the left, according to how many characters that are indicated in the left function. For example, in this case, it's just one character that I want, that tilde. So again, I'm using the left function, the name field, and then I want the first character. And so then I'll go ahead and I'll run it just to show you. Alright, so here I've got the first character of my field name. You can see it over here, and there's the first character. So now I'm going to go back into the design view, okay, and here we are again with this left function. Now we want the records that don't have the tilde on them because those are the records that actually say the query names. So we don't want the tilde. So I'm going to say not equal, oops, not equal, double quotes, tilde, which is up in the left top of your keyboard, and then quote again. Okay, and I'll run that again, and now it's not including those particular records that have the tilde because we said not equal in the criteria. So I'll go back and I'll take this and this field away so that I just get a list of names because that's all I really want. So I'll click on the show box here and I'll run it, and here I have a list of queries, and that's all I wanted. One thing that I do want to show you very quickly is how to get the SQL for this particular query. I can click down and I can say SQL view, and then here is the text for representing that query. It's called SQL programming language. So just thought I would mention that. Hopefully that information is clear. So to go back, we talked about hidden tables and system tables. Then we talked about MSys objects and how MSys objects lists all of our object names in it, and it has a name field and a type field, and the name field has the name of the objects, and then the type field indicates which kind of object it is. And we also talked about the fact that there are other records in that table that if you want to get a list of a certain kind of object, you have to filter those particular records out so that you only get the list of those objects that you want. And in this case, we're talking about queries. And then finally, we looked at how to create a query that lists queries. And so what we did was we came here, we brought the name field down, the type field down, we filtered for the criteria of 5 because we only wanted type 5, and then we wanted to get rid of any records that started with a tilde. So hopefully that was clear for you, and thank you for listening to this video.